And I cannot dim myself down or change myself to try to change someone else's perceptions. That's their problem. On a song that's on the radio and your mom turns to you and says, yeah, I hope you know your work like you know those song lyrics. Not feel right for me or something's not funny to me, I'm not laughing. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my Becoming Dr. Laurence series. If you didn't see the first episode, I will link it somewhere on the screen, but in the first episode I spoke about the dual degree program, the MD MPP program that I'm doing, and so if you're interested in hearing about that, be sure to check out that video. But today we are talking about a topic that I've been thinking a lot about recently, and it is about authenticity in medicine. So grab your favorite drink, listen to this while you get ready for the day, whatever it is, and ways that you want to watch this YouTube video. But I hope that you'll enjoy this chat that we're about to have today. So before we get started talking about authenticity in medicine, I just wanted to share a message for anyone who this hopefully reaches, which is I personally have been in quite the slump recently. Just like I think with like the weather changing and it getting dark, that seasonal depression feeling hitting in. It's also very close to finals around the corner, and I've just felt super overwhelmed to the point that I felt physically sick. I spent all of yesterday in bed, like literally did not leave bed. But I just want to normalize that and just say that it is so important to listen to your body and to do the things that you need to do to take care of yourself. There is a lot going on. There's a lot of pressure on us. And it's important to take a step back before it gets to the point that you completely break. So just wanted to mention that before we hop in and talk about today's topic. Be sure that you're taking care of yourself. Be sure you're loving yourself always. First of all, I just want to clarify what I mean by authenticity. To me, being authentic means that you're living truly in your values and who you are and showing up in that way. And why I wanted to talk about what this means and kind of the conflict that that can feel in medicine is that it can be a challenge to understand how to show up authentically in medicine. Specifically in this video, I'm going to be talking about my perspective as a Black woman at a predominantly white institution and within the system of medical education and medicine in general, which is a predominantly white profession, and what that means as a Black woman medical student, and also like what I hope to learn and continue to navigate as a Black woman resident, as a Black woman physician, you know, entering the 2.8, close to 3% of us, of physicians in the US who are Black women. So I'm speaking from that perspective when I talk about the challenges of trying to remain authentic. To me, this topic meant a lot because this whole Becoming Dr. Laurence series that I'm making is really me being very close to applying to residency and ending my medical school journey, reflecting on what it has took for me to get here and the lessons that I've learned thus far, although I still have many more years of training to go, as we all know. But one thing that I vividly remember when I was applying to medical school and first starting as an M1 was this fear that I would lose myself in the process. And I remember specifically journaling about a fear of losing my spark, of losing, you know, the basis of who I am. I still have those fears because medicine is a very hard field. It's very demanding. The hours are long, the tests are hard. It's incredibly difficult to get to the point of medical school, and then medical school itself is very difficult. And so I just remember really being scared, and really in those first couple of months when I started med school especially, I felt so lost. I went through like a breakup. I was like adjusting to Boston. I felt such imposter syndrome being at Harvard Medical School. Like it was a lot. Like I was going through it and I was like, dang, so this is the end of it. This is the end of like the kite that I thought I was, you know, blossoming into. I need to now just like fit this mold and try to just become what a Harvard medical student is supposed to be. So I was going through a lot. So I've been thinking back on that at least recently and sharing, you know, in this video some things that I've learned and how I, at least I believe, have remained authentic to myself, being, again, almost to the other side of it. So let's chat about that today. So first I want to talk a little bit about teasing out what I think are the two various ways about showing up authentically. I think one part of that is how you show up physically authentically, and we'll touch on kind of those physical aspects and what that meant for me. And then the other side is like, how do we act? You know, the words that we're saying, how we're speaking, and just more culture, authenticity. See, I told you I'm going to keep messing that up as I keep saying it. But I think both of those as a Black woman in medicine are hard. First, talking about the way that we show up, right? When you look around and there's not really anyone else who looks like you, there's a lot of things that Black women have been demonized for in the workplace that definitely rolls over into medicine as well. Hair, I think, is one of them. I remember writing a short Substack last year just about how much time and energy I have to put into my hair that, you know, my other classmates don't. Something as simple as like, you know, I'd show up with braids and everyone would ask, oh my gosh, how long did that take? And I'm like, 16 hours. So I got my micro braids, like, and that's just normal. And then being in Boston and just trying to find somewhere to get my hair done, or also the cost, being in med school and like not having money and having to drop $200, $300, getting a silk press. Our products are more expensive. Like just that, actually, hold on, I'm gonna make a little quick cameo. I want to shout out my classmate at Harvard Kennedy School. She's a PhD student, Anna, who wrote this book, The Double Tax. And it's a book about how Black women are basically double taxed in our society, and she has a great chapter all about hair. I recommend it. I'm going to link it below. But back to that, not only here, but then also from me being someone who's into fashion and makeup, and I've always, you know, wanted to express myself in these ways, and then trying to understand, can I still bring that into medicine or not? Will I be seen as unprofessional for showing up with, you know, my lip gloss and my hair done and stuff like that, which we'll touch about when I say how I navigated that. And then there's the how do we show up like culturally. So for me, bringing myself as my Caribbean self, bringing myself again as a Black woman into these spaces, and how you navigate that when you're not the majority culture. So like, you know, maybe my peers or the residents are playing their music in the workplace or in the OR and stuff, but like, how would it react when I throw some Afro beats on the OR playlist? Like, can I take those steps or not? So there's a lot more ways that go into it, but I think for the purpose of this video, I'm going to really focus in on like the physical aspects and then like the cultural aspects of how I found showing up in medicine to be challenging and how I was able to navigate that. I'm going to go back and tell a story. Growing up in the Caribbean, I feel like anyone with a Caribbean mom has heard this. But you know that moment when you're, you know, singing a song that's on the radio, and your mom turns to you and says, yeah, I hope you know your work, like you know those song lyrics. And growing up, I just always thought that was like so annoying because those two things are not even correlated. Like, yes, I know these song lyrics and I'm gonna know my work. Okay, I get it, mom. Why has that sentence like stuck into me? It's been engraved into me. And it actually, I think is actually very related to how I've approached like this challenges and concept of like how I can show up as myself. So what I mean by that is the same way that I know my song lyrics, I'm gonna know my work. And that means that I show up as my best self when I'm a medical student. So let's break this down as an example. The last rotation that I did in my clerkship year was surgery. So at this point, it's the last rotation. I've gotten quite used to being the med student and all of that. And so I'm showing up on my trauma surgery rotation. It is 5 a.m. I had my blush on, my hair was like silk pressed and curled, my cute, you know, scrubs are on. Like I'm showing up as me, doing the things that like waking up extra early just to put on a little bit of makeup was helping me to get through like the last bit of a very tough year, right? So that's why I'm showing up. However, I'm also showing up with my patient list prepared, ready to pre-round, giving my presentations, going the extra mile, you know, being an excellent medical student, the best that I can be. And those two parts of me always go together. And this, again, I just take it back to my mom as well. Like, another thing I vividly remember was being like maybe freshman or sophomore year of high school, and she had taken away my makeup at some point because she felt I was getting too distracted. And she would always tell me like, Kaisha, you're beautiful, but there's more to you than your beauty. And she always reminded me to have priorities. So the top priority being my schoolwork. And then after that could come, you know, putting on a little face and having some nails and stuff like that. And again, as a teenager, I was very annoyed. And I remember like, I think I was like crying in my journal, like, it's so annoying. Like the way I perform in school has nothing to do with like if I can put on some eyeshadow or not. Like mom is just like blowing us out of proportion, da da da, you know, 15-year-old and hormones are raging. But again, I'm so thankful that my mom gave me those lessons. And want to kind of share those lessons today because that built me into who I am and putting my education as that top priority. So for me, again, navigating medical school, navigating these systems, I kind of thought of it in my head as like, listen, I can't give you something to talk about, basically. Now, that's taken away from the fact that, yes, evaluations, I'm not saying I'm like showing up and like doing everything perfect. No, we're all learning and made mistakes and, you know, was learning in medical school because that's what it is. What I'm saying is, as far as something like showing up late, you know, not doing the tasks that were asked of me, you know, that those kind of things that, you know, someone in power could have talked about me. Like, I'm not going to give you any of those reasons, right? And so there is no reason to want to comment on the fact that I'm wearing a lip gloss or have my scrubs or even my social media, right? Social media we can talk a whole different video about because I'm also very particular about like not filming in the hospital or talking about patients and stuff like that. But just to put different examples out there, things in my head when I first started medical school, like, oh, I don't want to be labeled in a certain way. I don't want to be misperceived in a certain way. And especially when you are, you know, the only Black girl or one of two or one of three, there is already a microscope on you, right? So always showing up on time, period. Always being prepared, always being part of the team, always giving my 100%. And I do want to touch briefly on the opposite side of this. Again, I just have to shout out my girl Anna, and I think even the title of the book describes it perfectly, the double tax. Or I know other Black women in medicine especially have talked about that idea of the working twice as hard, that it is exhausting. It is exhausting to feel like you constantly hold yourself at a standard that is always higher as to not be talked down at or thought of as less than, or thought of as like, oh yeah, that's why she only got in because she's, you know, diversity, but she's really not as good and all of these things. So that is a very, very, very real thing. I might drop below just some studies on like the rate that Black residents are like expelled from residency compared to their peers. And again, people have written entire books about the struggles, the struggles. But anyways, that's a whole other topic. But I just wanted to briefly touch that. Yes, this idea of like me showing up authentically and having to always have like all of my T's crossed and all of my I's dotted also has another side of it, which is exhausting. But that's going to take us to the second piece of advice I have about how I navigated showing up as myself in these places. Okay, so the second piece of advice I have for showing up authentically in medicine is to have your sisterhood, have your community. This for me meant a couple of things. It's the other Black women in my class that I, you know, going through medical school with. It also meant for me when I first started medical school, I like would literally go through the hospital directories and look for Black women like at the Harvard hospitals I'm associated with. And like I was just having like quick like 15-minute chats in building kind of a mentorship that I can turn to. And I still like hold on to that and try to do that today. Actually, I'm like trying to schedule some like catch-ups for next week because I wanted to hear or like have Black women in my corner that I could turn to with the questions, or that if God forbid something happened where like my professionalism or something was a question, I could ask them for advice on like, how do I respond to this? Like, am I reading the situation right or wrong? Like people who have gone through it. Again, that's why I'm making the video of just sharing like what I've learned so far after 3 years of medical school. And so that's another piece of advice I would definitely give if you're a Black woman like starting med school is like find your people, find your people. Now, your people do not need to look like you also, and so just finding mentors, again, that you can turn to and be like, am I crazy? Or like, how should I approach this? And, you know, because a lot of med school too is you're learning that professionalism, you're learning how do you know, be the med student in the OR, and when is it time to talk, and when is it time to help, and when is it time to just stand there? Like, that is part of the experience as well. So having also upperclassmen, do not forget about your upperclassmen, especially if you're at a school like Harvard where like after first year, everyone just disappears. Like we're all at different hospitals and then people are doing fifth years like me now, and it can feel very much like I was like, where are the upperclassmen even at? So definitely reach out like your SNMA chapter and be able to connect with them, because we have the advice of having just been in your shoes that can just help you navigate the individual system that you're in. Another thing I had to do was find my Caribbean girls. And first year, what I did was I actually just posted on my social media, like, if you're in Boston and you're Caribbean, like, can you reply to this? And I made a WhatsApp group and then organized just like meeting up for lunch and like going to some of the events in the city together, because I was like, I need people who share my background. Because if you're constantly in places where you're the only one, like, it's just, it sucks. Like, that's the only way I can put it. It just sucks. And I knew I needed an outlet to share my culture and not have to explain myself. And just like, turn on soca music and we all could dance and we could share the same foods, and just like sharing that culture. It is so important. And so having those outlets were important for me, where then I could come back into Harvard Medical School and into the hospitals and be okay, not necessarily expressing that side of myself as much as I could have if I was around other people from my background. So I want to kind of circle back a little bit and talk about why this even matters and why showing up in yourself and with your values really matters. One, I think that I talked a little bit earlier about how hard this journey is, and burnout is very real. And what happens when you're burnt out, you can lose some of that spark. You can lose some of that additional compassion. You can lose like little bits and pieces of yourself. And when that happens, I really do feel like that leads to lesser patient care, right? And so being able to show up authentically does just help our patients as much as it helps us. In particular, I have seen where, although it's hard, being Black women in medicine, I also call it my superpower, because I've had experiences again and again, and I'm only the medical student on the team, but where I've seen how my presence on the team made a difference, specifically with other Black patients. And it is just those moments of the patient's looking at you and you're looking at them, and there's just like, I see you moment. And even though I'm there, I'm a little emotional thinking about it, like, I'm there as a medical student to help them. Like, they're in the hospital, they're going through this hard day, and not prompting it at all. I have had this happen not once, not twice, but multiple times, where the patient would be telling me to keep going and how much I need it in this field. And I would just, anytime something happened, it would just bring me to tears, because that's what I'm doing this for. But the fact that, again, they're in a vulnerable position, but they're like trying to give something back to me, always like blows my mind. But it's part of, like I say, that superpower, that reminder of why we're here, why God gave us this opportunity, why we're on this journey, and like the kind of doctors we need to become. And those kind of things ground me as well and help me to continue showing up as myself. Other reasons why it helps patient care is when you're confident in who you are, it also brings you that confidence to then speak up on behalf of others. And so being able to advocate for the patient's care is so key, because yes, I'm aware of the hierarchy in medicine. Yes, I'm aware that I'm being evaluated, but at the end of the day, I know my why. I know why I'm here and what I'm trying to do, and it's to become a doctor to serve my community, right? And so because of that, I'm like, well, I don't really care if this may ruffle some feathers or something. Like, I will speak up. And I could do another video on like ways that you can question things in a way that can be more taken in a way that's very professional, but just kind of like questioning things like, oh, I notice like this patient doesn't have a primary care physician and we were planning to discharge her today, and I think that her lack of primary care is one of the reasons I got her admitted in the first place. Like, is there a step that we could take to maybe like connect her with primary care, and like things of that nature. Like, that's a way that as a medical student, using your voice can help to make a change. And I know it's not necessarily the like authenticity in medicine we might think about, but I think that that's also very much part of it, because being able to show up and be confident in who you are gives you the confidence to also speak up, question plans, and just try to provide the best patient care possible. Or sometimes, especially when you're the only Black person on your team, your patients might be telling you things that they actually did not tell other members of the team. And I've also had that happen. But just as I continue to have those experiences, it just continued to tell me that who I am, I cannot just leave at the door, because that person is why I'm here. And it's what the kind of doctor that I'm going to become, and the one that's needed in my community. And so finding the ways to not just try to fit in or fit this mold, but to fully bring who I am as a person into these spaces, I realized was crucial and was an important lesson that I learned as I went across medical school. I also think that there's really a key connection between authenticity and integrity. Because if you're just going through medical school and like constantly trying to fit in and not really bringing your true self, like that also means that you're not bringing that truth, right? And that integrity is also like a crucial part in you becoming the doctor you're supposed to be becoming. So an example of this I thought about was like I was on one rotation, and it just, it wasn't my favorite rotation, and that's fine. We all have the specialties that we're drawn to more than the others. But I mean, regardless of what I think, I'm going to show up and give my 100%, as we talked about. So I was on a consulting team, and then it was like Friday, and we got feedback from the attending. And I just remember his feedback. It was something along the lines of like, he was like, Keisha, you're really, you don't really pretend. Like, and he's like, no, like disrespect. That's not like a bad thing, or like no disrespect to your other colleagues. But I do feel like a lot of students, like you'll ask them what specialty are they interested in, and they'll still mention the specialty that they're on, even though it's not. And I think there was a point, I think on the consult week, where I was like, yeah, this is like not for me. Like I didn't say it like that, but I was just like, like I just don't, like, I'm not gonna lie, like, and I'm very respectful. And he said it to my feedback. It was like very, very respectfully, like, you did great work this week. I could definitely tell, like, you learned a lot throughout the week, etc., etc. Like, it was a great evaluation, but it was the way, like, he pointed that out. And I remember laughing with him, and I was like, yeah, I think I've gotten that before. Like, listen, again, I think that at that point, I had realized that there was different ways to kind of play this game and go through this medical education. And one part of it definitely is that, like, fitting in, and I'm gonna laugh with this joke and da-da-da-da-da. And I really just took the approach of like, this is me. And that doesn't mean that I was like not trying to make friends or like be part of the team. Like I said, that was always the number one priority. But if something did not feel right for me, or something's not funny to me, I'm not laughing. Like, I just, it's funny to me that I think part of, I guess, the challenges I had being, Black woman in medicine, like I said, also becomes that superpower of like building that trust of like, you know what, you, like I said in the feedback, it's just like, yeah, you could tell like you really meant what you said, and he appreciated that. So I just wanted to share that story too, of like, even a lot of what you're going through in clinical year, like I said, you're evaluated, you're going from attending to attending to attending. To me, my biggest advice, and I feel like I've said it like 5 times on this video, being patient-centered and being purpose-centered, because I am not here to, again, just get great evaluations. That's part of the process, but I'm here to learn, and I'm here to learn how to take care of patients and become the best doctor I can be. And so yeah, I thought it was funny that like literally also like attendees kind of picked up on that too, and it's something I hope to continue and like take with me into residency as well. It's just like having that virtuous personality, having that authentic self that you're showing up with, I think was like so key to me. So I want to briefly touch about perception, because I think that when I thought about, the fears that I had starting medical school and continue to have, a lot of it goes around like, oh, well, what if someone perceives me to be this? So I'm going to bring in the physical aspect, because it's something that I thought about a lot. And I would have the fear, and I still do. And let's be honest, medicine's also a very misogynistic field, very racist field, misogynist, like all of that is within these institutions, right? So there's reasons why I feel this way. But like, I would feel like, okay, if I show up with makeup or like in a nice dress, like people are not going to take me seriously. And I think there's truth to that statement. But I had to ask myself, well, why, going back to kind of the advice I gave before about always like showing up as my best self, like if they're gonna have that perception at the end of the day, they're gonna have that perception. If they think that Black women are just inferior as doctors, they're gonna have that perception. And I cannot dim myself down or change myself to try to change someone else's perceptions. That's their problem. And that mindset really helped me to then be okay showing up with my cute clinic outfits, love me a good clinic fit, or having my makeup done or having my hair. I remember purposely for when I was starting my surgery rotation, I did the blonde braids, and I just felt so powerful because I was like, here I am walking through the Harvard ORs with blonde braids, Beyonce looking braids going down my back, like showing up authentically in who I am. And if someone would look at that and think that that's unprofessional, not seeing all of the great, remarks and the great learning that I was doing, then again, that would be their issue. I learned this a lot as someone who has a social media page because I put myself publicly. And when you put yourself out there publicly, especially on the internet, you open yourself up to comments. And I've gotten crazy DMs and I've gotten comments. They're always from people with no followers and no profile picture. But anyway, he's like, that's part of it, right? But I think because of that, and again, I've been doing social media since high school, so it's been over 10 years now, I learned that no matter what I do, someone might perceive something negatively. Sometimes those perceptions are good, testings for you, like, because impact and intent are not the same. And it's important for us to recognize, like, you might not intend something to be that way, but our people are giving you feedback. Like, criticism is not always a hate train. That's another topic as well. Like, that is important to have that, like, input and output with other people and their criticisms or their comments. But overall, I recognize that if I live my life, both my professional life and my personal life, trying to control other people's perceptions, like, I would have been deeply, deeply unhappy. All right, so as we wrap up this chat today, just want to give a brief overview of what we've talked about today. So today we've been chatting about authenticity in medicine, what it is, how I kind of break it up into showing up authentically, not only physically and how I presented myself, my hair, my makeup, but also culturally, bringing myself as a Caribbean Black woman into these spaces that were not designed for us, but that we flourish in anyways. And some of the things that I've learned along the way. That included the fact that the lessons my mom gave me definitely rang true, and that I prioritize my education as the number one priority always. That I can't control people's perceptions of me, and especially when entering these spaces, again, that can be very racist, that can be very misogynistic, that you can be the only one who looks like you, that you are dealing with a diverse set of people, backgrounds, people in sometimes their worst times, vulnerable times they're going through when they're sick. And unfortunately, that can bring out the worst in people. And you're dealing with residents and doctors who are also going through tough training times and burnt out. And that can also bring out the worst in people. And I say all that saying that majority of my clinical experiences are positive, right? But yeah, some experiences do happen. All that being said, you cannot control every single perception. It is up to you to know who you are, what are the values that you hold, and specifically we're talking about this journey in medicine, holding that value of patient care as the center and the most important thing, I think will help you find the ways to show up authentically throughout medical school. It is not always about every single evaluation or about trying to fit in or do what everyone else is doing. It's about finding out what your purpose is and showing up in that way. Overall, I still have a lot to learn. As I said, I've made mistakes, and the purpose of these YouTube videos is not to be a prescriptive manuscript. Most of it is rambling on, as you see, but instead to just share some tidbits of the journey on becoming Dr. Laurence that I've learned so far. So if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe. I'll put links to my blog and my other social medias below, and also leave some comments on what topics you'd like to see me cover next. But I hope everyone has a blessed day. And as I said in the beginning, please also don't forget to take care of yourself.